let's take a further look at some of the modules found within the controllers section in Salvation. Okay, so what I've done first of all, I've actually made us up a little patch here, and what I'm going to highlight first of all is the latch module, which can be found in the controller section. We've used some of the controller modules, but there are actually a lot more in here that we haven't visited as of yet. So, the latch. What does the latch do? So, the latch has an input port, a trigger port, and an output port. When I send a signal to the trigger port, the value received at the in port will be captured and sent to the output port and held until a new trigger is received at the trigger port. So, what I've got here, I've got a random noise generator. So if I hold my mouse there, you can see it's randomly generating values between 0 and 1. This goes into the input port on the latch. I've got a push button here to create my trigger. Then my output is just going to a monitor just so that we can see this value here, and I'm completing my GL chain with the rectangle and the window there. And quite simply, when I push the push button, we capture a different value. Quite simple. Simple as that. So you can see that we can just keep hitting that button as many times as we want, and we can capture the value. Okay, so let's take this a little bit further. Let's have a look at what else we've got in there. So this is another really useful module called the ramp module. So the ramp module will create a value from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0 depending on the direction of the ramp. And when a trigger is received, the ramp is triggered and it will take the time specified at the time port and pass the current value to the output port. So the time is in seconds, so let's say 4 seconds, and then when I give that a press, we should see the value on here changing over a period of 4 seconds. So you see it's building up to 1 like so, and then it stays at 1. And it's only when we press the button does it start from that base again. Now the default mode is going upwards, but actually if we extend the module, right click and show parameter, we've got an option here for direction. And so on the direction box we can choose up, or down. So obviously up and down will go from 0 up to 1, and it's going to take 4 seconds in each route. There we go, and another press will take it all the way back down to 1. So that's like a toggle up, toggle down, toggle up, toggle down, whereas the other ones will only go in that one direction and will restart from the minimum or the maximum value every time you press the trigger button again. You have also got the option there on whether it's a smooth linear interpolation. So obviously that just changes the sort of the feel of the controller value. So also we have a switch module, which I find is a very useful thing, especially when you're creating your own patches. So far the latch, the ramp and the switch, they can all be found in this controller section here. So we've got latch, ramp and switch. So the switch does exactly what you would expect. You can send multiple values into a switch, and then using the value received at the selection port, you can determine which of these values is then passed to the output port. So we can see at the moment I've actually attached a multi-button here, and each of these buttons will give me a different input port. So we can see the first one is selected here, that's 25, and that's why we're seeing this 25 on our monitor value there. So if I press number 1, that should give us a 50, like so, and number 2 should give us our 75. So the switch is really useful. Now you can actually connect more than one switch together. By default this module can support up to 4 inputs, but if we actually just move it out of the way a little bit and go on an alternate skin 4 inputs and link, excuse me, we can then add further modules. So I'm going to copy and paste. Let's bring him down a little bit. What I'm also going to do there, I'm just going to add some more boxes so that we can tell what's going on there. So let's take that one into number, that one there, that one into there, that one there, and I'm just going to change those values a bit more as well. So 100. I'm going to keep using my 25 spacing increments. There we go. Now what we need to do for the selection, obviously this module only goes up to 4, so I'm going to go to an alternative skin and put it to text. There we go. So now if I roll through that, so number 3 it gives me my value of 100. Now when I go to number 4, we'll see that it's still just looking at this first module. So what we need to do is we need to take the output and put it to the input of this module here. And then we see 125 and 150. So when we link the modules like this, all of these modules are chained as one big module. So we've got input 0, 1, 2, 3, then we've got 4, 5, and so on. So we see that the 5 is giving us this value here, 150. So the switch is a really useful one. That could be, I'm using a number box there, that could be anything. It could be an external signal that's switching, it could be a MIDI source, an ArtNet source, anything at all. Okay, so our final venture in the world of controllers. Now this one is a little bit more complex, so bear with me, but it's a really, really useful one when you're trying to create your own logic systems in Salvation. So let me just bring that window up a little bit. I'm using the arrow keys to scroll up my interface there. Let's just pull those out the way. There we go. Okay. So this module, Buffer Select, it's a rather useful module. Now, there's a module called Auto Select. Now, let's just bring this out the way first of all. So, what I've got here at the moment, disconnect that. So, I have got 2 sets of values here. My top value, any button is a value of 0 or 1 unless we tell it otherwise. So if I bring up my inspector so we can see our values here, when I hover over the button port, see it's a value of 0. When I press the button it's 1, let go it's 0. So what I'm doing here, I'm saying the result of this push button, multiply it by 2. So obviously 2 multiplied by 0 is 0. But when I press the button, we get a value of 2. And we can see that on our monitor here as well. I've done the same here with this other section, but I've multiplied by 4. So that should give us a resulting value of 4, which it does. Now, when we've got multiple inputs, like we have there, if we want to, excuse me, if we want to plug them into a single destination, so for instance the colour of this rectangle, we can use an auto select. Now when I press the button it goes up, but when I let go it registers the 0. Now in a lot of situations this is fine, but there are certain situations where you do not want to register a 0. You only want to register numbers above 0, greater than 0. Because obviously 0 in certain situations can create no video or black pixels or anything like that. So for the times when you don't want to send a 0, we have the Buffer Select module. So this one works exactly the same as the Auto Select module, except it will not pass a 0. So it's connected up in exactly the same way. I've got another monitor here so that we can see the value of the Buffer Select compared to the value of the Auto Select. Now, so if I press my button first of all, so we can see the 2 has gone through to both of those modules there, both of those monitors. But when I let go, you'll see that my Auto Select returns to 0 because that's the next value received. But because the Buffer Select ignores 0, it's going to hold that 2 until it receives another value which is also not 0. So pressing this one leaves my 4 there, and obviously when I hold that button I've got 4 on both modules, but as soon as I let go, my top module, my Auto Select, will go back to 0, the bottom at 4. So it's just a subtle difference between Buffer Select and Auto Select. Auto Select will pass any number including 0, and Buffer Select will only pass numbers which are not 0.